And I would like a roll call, please.
Ms. Culver?
Here.
Ms. Hyman?
Here.
Ms. Meyer?
Here.
Ms. Selby?
Here.
Ms. Fick?
Here.
Ms. Garlowski?
Here. Okay. Welcome, everybody. We are going to start tonight with the President's Report, and I would be remiss if I did not start by congratulating everybody from both the high schools and all of the staff, the administration, for doing a tremendous, an incredible job with graduation last week. It was really just an unbelievable experience for everybody, and the students and families have gotten sort of nothing but glowing comments, and just sort of wanted to I know how much incredible hard work goes into putting those nights together, and we just sort of show up. But so thank you to everybody. It was really incredible, and as a parent of a graduate this year too, it was extra special. So thank you and congratulations once again to all of our graduates. Okay. On June 1st, 2018, the board met to discuss the process for the search for its next superintendent. As many of you may be aware, after listening to input from stakeholders and assessing what the board believes is in the best interest of the entire district right now, the board decided to proceed with a search for an interim superintendent for the 2018-19 school year. Making the decision to find the right leader on an interim basis to prepare and guide us through the next school year will provide us with the time needed to engage in a thorough and adequate search for the district's next permanent superintendent. We have a process in place that calls for collaboration with all of our stakeholder groups and have reached out to a wide range of potential candidates, resulting in more than a dozen applicants. Our collaboration with stakeholders will be reflected, at least in part, through our Stakeholder Advisory Committee, which is comprised of a wide range of community members, students, and staff. The committee members have been appointed by the board president in accordance with Board Policy 2-150 and with recommendations and input from many sources, including my fellow board members, our staff, administration, District 113 student representatives, PTO board members, and DEA presidents. Christine Gonzalez helped prepare an invitation that was sent out to an initial list of potential members who were given 2 days to respond. Alternates were contacted when negative responses were received. The final number of stakeholders on the committee is more of a function of who responded and was available versus any planned ratio. I used additional criteria to keep it fair, such as turning down requests from those who have previously participated and making a decision not to invite individuals currently serving on our sender district boards or other government partners. The committee will be responsible for participating in confidential interviews of the final candidates as chosen by the board and providing feedback to the board. We will discuss this in more detail later in our agenda. We are excited about the committee and are grateful to everyone who has agreed to serve on such short notice. We want to remind the committee and the rest of our stakeholders that while the board will always consider your feedback and input, I cannot stress enough that the final decision and responsibility to hire a superintendent is the legal obligation and ethical duty of the Board of Education alone. It is prescribed in the school code, and each of us takes this duty very seriously. Okay, we are now going to move to citizens' comments. We welcome your comments and questions and give them serious consideration. Pursuant to Board of Education Policy 2-230, please identify yourself and, if applicable, state the agenda item to which your comment is directed. Please limit the length of all comments to no more than 3 minutes per comment period. We will do our best to address your questions during the relevant agenda item discussion. For non-agenda related questions or for your questions that require additional response time, we will follow up with you as well as report back at the next board meeting. We'll grab the sign-in sheet.
You already got it?
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, I have the first person who indicated they are a speaker on this sign-in sheet is Debbie Dicker. Yeah. Someone timing?
Good evening. My name is Debbie Dicker. I'm a math teacher at Highland Park High School, and I'm also the DEA Vice President for Highland Park. DEA President Jerry Lavin could not attend the meeting tonight, so I read the following statement on his behalf. I would like to address a couple of important points regarding the process created by the Board of Ed to hire an interim superintendent. First, I would like to express my concern that the board has not discussed or examined the possibility of giving itself what is easily available: more time to do an adequate search for an interim superintendent and to conduct a reasonable, in-depth vetting of candidates. Instead, by choosing to compress into 3 to 4 weeks all of the tasks necessary for the hiring process that typically would occur over several month period, the board has created no reasonable margin for error in a task that is a fundamental priority of a Board of Ed: to hire a competent superintendent well suited to the district. One of the reasons that I and others have previously suggested the hiring of a retiree for the summer months was not only to allow the time for an adequate search, but also in light of the difficulty of composing a truly representative interview committee on such short notice when one of the most important stakeholders, teachers, are dispersed for the summer. This leads me to my second point. DEA has always been invited to choose its own representatives to sit on interview teams, whether for superintendents, assistant superintendents, principals, and other key administrators. Yet this time, I was asked on a Friday to submit by the following Monday a list of staff members to potentially be invited to join the interview team. I was asked to submit more names than spots available in case some invited staff declined. But I was also told that the board, not DEA, would decide whom to invite, based on some unstated standard where the Board of Ed then skipped over some names submitted to invite others first. This process of not allowing DEA to select its own representatives departs from the district's own longstanding past procedures, and even when this was pointed out, the process was not changed. In hopeful times like this for our district, it is more important than ever that process be honored and that stakeholder groups be afforded the trust that has existed in our past. Thank you, Jerry Lavin. I would also like to add that this is, and this is not in Jerry's statement, that one of the consequences of the expedited process and lack of transparency is the narrative that is being written, which is one that assumes the board has already chosen who they want for the next superintendent. I have heard that numerous times just in the last several days. As you know from reading the comments in the most recent climate survey, DEA members clearly shared their concerns about the authenticity of the interview processes that have taken place in recent years. So I urge you to consider using this opportunity to show the staff in this district that their voices have been heard. Thank you.
Okay, Rick Heineman.
Okay, I'm Rick Heineman. I'd like to speak about the selection process for the interim superintendent or superintendent team. It's clear that the goal of the stakeholder committee is to select the best possible person for the job, but there's an important second objective. That is to recommend someone who will also be the consensus pick of the board. In order to do this, we need to understand what the board is looking for. So an important part of the process is to understand Board of Education priorities. For example, let's say you have a scale from 0 to 100 of someone who is just going to provide caretaking activities versus a very active change maker. We have to have some concept, the stakeholder group has to have some concept of where you want this person to fall on that scale for us to use that in the evaluation process. Because I think it'd be much better if both the stakeholder group and the board wanted the same person or same team. So in order to do that, any guidance that can be given on, I mean, that's just one particular issue, but on any of those sorts of issues to help us understand what kind of criteria the board will use so that we can use that in our deliberations. Because I just would really like to have us both pick the same folks. Thank you.
I don't have anyone else selected as wanting to speak. I'm sorry, your name?
Mary Beth Barsnett.
Okay. You actually did sign in first.
Good evening. My name's Mary Beth Arzak. I'm a parent of a high school and a junior high student in Highland Park. And I wanted to just say that I think this community has so much greatness in it. Intelligence, dedication, and would really like to bring to attention that I believe we all have the same goals. We all want our children to have a great education. We want to be great role models. And I see many people spending countless hours. And I am concerned that because we are all so passionate, we've lost our way on what's really important. I am concerned that if we can't find a way to come back together and have reasonable dialogues, we're going to develop a poor reputation. We're not going to get the best candidates. We're not going to keep the best talent, and that's the exact opposite of what I feel everybody is really fighting for. And I would like to suggest or ask the board, and I'm happy to support, I know many citizens are, what can we do to have more conversation and less arguing? I don't know if it's off-site meetings, I don't know if it's task force, but I would very much appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Okay, I'll just keep going down the list in case any of these people did want to speak. Barb Sereda.
Hi, thank you so much. I actually wanted to speak about the issue of transparency in the selection of the Board of Ed member to fill the vacancy, and specifically the decision that was made at the June 1st meeting not to hold open session interviews. And I was hoping that you might reconsider your decision only to hold closed session interviews. At that meeting, the board indicated that it was not board policy to hold open session interviews, and I think someone even said we're not supposed to. And they relied on policy 270, but that interpretation is actually the exact opposite of the interpretation that was had 6 months ago by the same board, under which you allowed open session interviews. And I believe 270 just does not prohibit open interviews. It merely states that you may hold them in closed session. You may recall last November, Julie Gordon resigned, thus creating an open seat on the board. And at a meeting on November 27th, 2017, this board discussed extensively for 30 minutes how to handle the interview process. At the time, according to board president Michelle Culver, 270 allowed for both open session and closed session hybrid interviews, a fact she discovered when a member of the community informed them that in the past there had been open session interviews. At that meeting, the structure was discussed to have a hybrid to ensure the public transparency, and many of you agreed, and even you had agreed that transparency was important. As a result, the board scheduled a special meeting where the finalists, Ms. Bick and myself, made a 45-minute presentation, each about our backgrounds, our reasons for wanting to serve, and we responded to very detailed questions ranging from our philosophy of our Board of Education roles, as well as our challenges that the district might face, including financial challenges. There were over 50 people in the audience, and the meeting was watched by hundreds and hundreds of viewers. This was a terrific opportunity for constituents to understand the perspective of the applicants, as well as their preparedness to serve and their leadership style and credibility. And I can tell you from the perspective of the interviewee, and Ms. Bick may share this, it was a really rigorous process, and it helped us better understand the role and perspectives of all stakeholders. I was quite surprised at the June 1st meeting when, upon deciding that there would only be closed session interviews, that it was against the same policy that allowed us to hold, or you to hold open session. And I think especially at such a critical time as the new board member will serve when a new superintendent will be hired. And that we just did this 6 months ago, we had open session interviews under the same policy. And I think to the point of what others have said here currently in our community, there really is a lack of trust of the board, and I think by flip-flopping from a transparent interpretation of policy to one that really promotes secrecy really doesn't help the healing and coming together that our community so desperately needs, and I think quite eloquently put by Mary Beth. So I would ask respectfully the board interpret the policy the same as they did 6 months ago.
Time is up.
Yeah, thank you.
Mary Pike.
Thank you. My name's Mary Pike. I live in the community and I work at Highland Park, and I just wanted to, I guess, ask for clarification. I know you can't talk back to me, but because I've been involved in a lot of the interviews over the years for different positions, I'm a bit concerned that neither of the principals are interviewing. This is what I heard. Now maybe I'm wrong. And since the equity position has been put on hold, and there is, I don't know who is on the interview committee, my concern is that we have a diverse perspective and we have an all-white board. I would like to make sure that, because I was on the last interview committee for our superintendent, and really my understanding is that a different selection was made than by the people that I have done a lot of equity work with would have chosen. So the idea that none of those people are on the board, and the board made that last decision, which didn't turn out well for our community, this process is a concern to me. Thanks.
Okay. Ms. Tanimoto? Okay. Kate Lynn? No. Okay. Do we have other citizens' comments?
Hi, everyone. I'm Jane Gard. I spent 16 of my best professional years in this district, and I'm very proud and happy to be able to say that. I'm here, even after I retired 18 years ago, because the environment in which I worked was special. Now, I'm sure lots of schools will tell you, we're special. I don't think I'm exaggerating. The culture and climate in this district was something that I've never witnessed elsewhere. I worked with lots of school districts, their principals, and so forth, and I hope they were as good as we were, but I don't know that. What I would like to see in the hiring process, whatever steps you go through, is, as has been said, transparency. You won't build any trust if you're not really transparent. From the get-go, people will be, you know how that goes. Secondly, when you describe what kind of candidate you want, I would urge you to go past the degrees, the credentials, the letters of recommendation, and to ask yourselves what you want in this principal as a human being. How does he or she learn? How does he collaborate? How does he deal with difficult circumstances? Is he more likely to give kids and teachers a second chance if they make a little mistake, or is he going to, I keep using he, it could easily be she, I know that. Or is there going to be a way to treat that person with respect and possibly have him or her learn from what has happened? This person whom you hire, I would hope, would be the kind of person that you would feel comfortable talking to, walking down the hall with, having lunch with. That doesn't mean you have to be buddy-buddy and go on fishing trips and so forth. It just means you have to know that this person is a quality person, because the superintendent, just like principals in schools, direct the culture of the building. Who they are is what that school becomes, if it wasn't already. And I think you're in a building stage, so probably it would be good to think about that. I know this is a tough time, and hearts are broken, and mine as well, even though it's a long time ago. And so I know you have a tough job. I do wish you the very best, and I'm rooting for you to do what needs to be done. Thank you.
Do we have any other citizens' comments? Nope. Okay. Thank you. I'm actually going to take a minute to amend my report and just want to respond briefly. Some of the comments that were stated earlier, specifically by on behalf of Mr. Lavin, a lot of those comments were actually submitted to the board earlier this week. We actually received a lot of comments, and they were responded to already. So I just going to say that, and the way what we've responded, and I'll say it again here, is that it's unfortunate and disappointing that those of you, some of you, not who stand before us as leaders and representatives of various stakeholder groups, have already concluded that despite your lack of full knowledge due to the board's legal obligation to keep certain information confidential, that this board will fail to employ an adequate interim superintendent. We agree that the timing is not ideal. However, the timing does not preclude us from completing a thorough search process. In fact, we have proof of just the opposite. We have seen other school districts right in our own backyard find effective interim superintendents and exceptional permanent superintendents, notwithstanding disruption, turmoil, transit of staff, and even an expedited process. So again, we want you to know that we value your voices and your opinions, but we are also ready to move forward and put the past behind us. We hope all of you can come around and join us in good faith, using respectful discourse and open minds in our current search for an interim superintendent and eventually the search for a permanent one. However, the premature negative conclusions and combative attitudes that we've seen are not only unproductive, but they are setting a bad example for our students and the community at large. And not only that, they're not going to change our process. We will continue to operate unapologetically according to district policy and Illinois law. Okay. We are now going to move to our reports. We have Principal Catherine Anderson from Deerfield.
Hi there. First of all, to echo our board president, Lizzie Gorlewski, I just wanted to say that it was a pleasure to have the Board of Education at our graduation at Ravinia, as well as all of our teachers, staff members, our graduates and family members. It's a wonderful celebration. I think there's something special to be said about the number of staff that we have attending. It really becomes a community event. So thank you to the board members. It was a really special event for Deerfield. In addition to that, some special news from Deerfield. If you haven't already seen a lot of the news releases for the 7th Annual Illinois High School Musical Theater Awards, Natalie Doppel won Best Actress for her portrayal of Sister Mary Robert in Sister Act. Natalie will represent the state of Illinois at the Jimmy Awards, also known as the National High School Musical Theater Awards in New York on June 25th. So we're so very proud of her and wanted to just kind of thank her family, her wonderful teachers and mentors within District 113. And although Natalie has now graduated, we're so very proud of her and are looking forward to seeing the results of the Jimmy Awards. In addition to this great news for our staff, as you know, we are now on summer break, but before we left, we had a wonderful retirement breakfast at the school, and this is in large part from our DHS Optimists. This is a wonderful group of staff who kind of help with celebrations, and they were there to celebrate our retirees, Tim Benton, Maureen Darnaby, and Michelle Friedman. And it was nice to have their families there, as well as several retirees. So it was really, again, kind of a community event to say goodbye to and celebrate those retirees. In addition, we at Deerfield High School were able to host this year 8th grade graduations for Shepherd and Caruso Middle Schools. So it was a kind of a nice change for them to have a taste of DHS as they graduate. So we're looking forward to welcoming our 8th graders, incoming freshmen, for next year. As we're in summer break, we have summer school that just started today, as well as several summer athletic camps, and our teachers and staff are busy getting some rest, going on vacation, and as true educators, they are always learning. So they are attending and presenting at several workshops, some as recent as actually the week of finals. One of our science teachers, Diane Randa, was in Slovenia, and she was presenting there. Jeff Berger-White was in New York this past weekend, and several other of our staff members have already been very busy with being educators outside of the school as well. So we're very proud of them, and we just hope that everybody has a wonderful summer break.
Okay, thank you. We are now going to move to our FOIA reports that Mr. Krieger will provide us.
Thank you. So first, to update a few of the items that I discussed at the May 29th board meeting. We had FOIA requests from Jake Lefkowitz and Karen Berkowitz for copies of the superintendent's separation agreement. We have provided timely responses to both of those requests. On May 24, 2018, we received a request from Smart Procure for purchasing records. We responded in a timely manner. On May 25, 2018, we received 3 FOIA requests from Jonah Meadows, one for separation agreements between the district and former employees back to 2008, 2 emails sent or received by Chris Dignam between May 17 and May 22, 2018, and 3 electronic communications sent or received by members of the board. We received an extension of time to respond to those requests and will be responding tomorrow. On May 29, 2018, we received a request from Mark Johnson for IMRF salary and benefits information. We provided a timely response to that request. On May 30th, 2018, we received a request for retiree information from the Illinois Retired Teachers Association. We denied the part of the request that asked for personal information, but granted the request and responded to the non-personal information. And on June 1st, 2018, we received a request from Jonah Meadows for a copy of David Small's resignation letter, and we responded in a timely manner. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, it is now recommended that the minutes be approved as listed. Special meeting May 22nd, 2018, special meeting closed session May 22nd, 2018, regular meeting May 29th, 2018, closed session May 29th, 2018, special meeting June 1st, 2018, and special meeting closed session June 1st, 2018. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing as there's no discussion, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Okay, we're going to move to our discussion items. The first one is Board of Education Policy 4-111.
Okay, good evening. So this travel policy was part of the 5-year review, which was discussed in our policy committee meeting. Based on the feedback received from the policy committee, it went through the changes based on the feedback and also went through an internal review. That's for the district-owned vehicles and then also the personal vehicles for district use. So are there any questions?
The one question is, I'm not sure how different this is in terms of what we have now, and so there will be procedures written right afterwards for communication.
Correct. There will be guidelines for that, because especially for personal vehicles, we're not allowed to transport students in the personal vehicles, so we will be creating guidelines for that. Yes. Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Next, we have Board of Education student behavior policies. 7-190, several of them. We can now. Tiffany Chavez is not here tonight. I don't know if any of you had submitted questions or for any of these policies. No. Okay, so we have 7-190, 7-200, 7-210, 7-220, and 7-221. 2:30. Does anybody have any discussion or questions about these policies?
We had done major changes the last 2 years with, well, last year, 7100, with 7100. But then there were some changes to the law, and she just added some certain words in there. But she did say that if you had any questions, she's, and Madam, she'll read your email. She's traveling right now, though. You saw that email.
These are the policies that have the committee that we're not on, right? Because
Right.
And so the staff and parents didn't have much to change because so much is done and just some updates. So a little language, wordsmithing.
Okay. The next item up for discussion is the Highland Park High School Orchestra International trip to Costa Rica.
Good evening. Actually, Remington Clark is here to speak about the trip. So
Great.
Remington, may he come up there? Is that okay? If he goes up there?
Yes,
at this
yes,
point?
please.
Okay, go ahead.
Hello. Do I just talk about the trip?
Yeah.
Okay. So we try to go on a trip every 2 years. There was 2 years where we didn't go on a trip due to lack of interest, but now there seems to be more interest in a trip. We went on a trip this past year with Deerfield. It was a fabulous experience. We went to Iceland, and we got to perform together. They have previous agenda to take their own trip next year. So in the 2011-2012 school year, I took the orchestras to Costa Rica, and it was a fabulous opportunity. I've been back actually 4 times since then to work with a youth orchestra that we worked with. So we've already made connections and plans to work with the same youth orchestra that we did 6 years ago. So I'm very excited. I looked at the travel warnings and everything. There's nothing anywhere where we're going to be that seems like it's going to be an issue. We have corporation we worked with was the same one we worked with last year with Deerfield, called World Strides. They're fabulous. They're wonderful for scholarship as well. They offer like an essay competition for students who would like funding towards the trip. We have a car wash that we do as an orchestra. We have an orchestra parent group that we sometimes use if we need. And we also do other fundraisers as well to make sure that any student who's interested in participating can. The trip is international, but it's still at a reasonable price. We've already talked to some of the parents and saying that this is 2 international trips in a year, back to back. And it seems like there's students who did not go on the last trip that would really like to go on this trip, especially the seniors who are going to be seniors this year. This will be their last trip. So it just seemed like an all-around wonderful opportunity. So I'm hoping it works. Yes.
You first.
In light of the somewhat unusual destination for this trip, is it influencing the repertoire that you're choosing or developing as a result of going to Costa Rica?
Yeah, so the repertoire, I like to do a little bit of both. I think I used to plan music that was based on the country that we're going to, but they're really interested in hearing American music, like from us. They think that we're somehow specialists in that. So I like to do a little bit of a mix, but also to pay homage to them by picking 1 or 2 pieces of their own.
I knew you'd ask a good question that he'd want to answer as opposed to mine. No, so just a couple things. So is the plan, it looks great. I'm assuming we're using all of the carriers that are, the mainstream carriers, air carriers, that sort of
Yes,
thing.
yeah.
In the future, is the plan to go back to an every other year thing, and are there more plans to coordinate with Deerfield?
I would love to coordinate with Deerfield again. I think that is a plan. I also want to go back to the every other year trip, and I'm just trying to also get away from the band, orchestra, and choir all traveling on the same year, which was this year. So if I go this year, if we go next year, then we'll be offsite, which is a good thing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you. Okay, we're next going to move to the posting of the tentative budget. Gail, did you want to do your finance committee report this time? Okay, Gail will start with the finance committee report.
So the finance committee met today at 5 o'clock, and I'll just give a brief overview of that. We had representatives from PMA Financial Network who presented, where they provided an overview of the district's investments. The district completed an annual post-issuance compliance review of the district's bond records as required by the IRS. Ali Mahanti, the district's assistant superintendent of finance, presented the first look at the budget for the next school year, 2018-2019. For next year, total operating revenues are projected to increase by 2.14%, while our operating expenditures are projected to increase by 2.24%. We are looking at a balanced budget for next year, and the district continues to plan for the future while addressing the current needs of the students and the community, as well as continue the mission of reducing expenditures while keeping high-quality programs.
Okay.
On that, the board, as far as the next steps are concerned on the fiscal year 19 budget, on July 9th board meeting, the board will approve the authorization of publication of notice of public hearing on tentative budget. It'll be posted in Pioneer Press newspaper on July 12th, 2018. And then on August 13th, there will be a public hearing on the budget at the board meeting, followed by the adoption. As per the school code, the school district is required to adopt the budget by September 30th. So by adopting the budget on August 13th, we will meet that timeline.
Thank you. Does anybody have any other discussion about the? All of us were in attendance at the Finance Committee, so we got an excellent presentation and a great briefing, so thank you. Thank you for your report, Gail. Okay, next we will discuss transportation capital purchases, buses.
Yeah, we are looking to go out for 3 buses this summer. We've taken a little vacation, as it was stated, on purchasing buses the last couple of years, so we're kind of playing a little catch-up. Historically, it's been around 2 buses a year. That's been the program. But this year, we're going out for 3 buses. A total just shy of $200,000.
Does anybody have any questions or discussion about the buses?
So this was in the this is in the budget.
Yeah, this is in the capital for next year.
And then I asked a question and you had answered, but for other people to know too, that we have one bus that's at 80,000 miles, and still the conversation with the staff is that it's time to turn it in.
Yes, it's like any vehicle. Some age better than others, depending how they got used, what routes they've been on. Was it a heavy athletic bus? That gets a lot of cleats and other things that happen. Get in the buses, and they just age differently. So that's why that bus is being moved out.
And then since they on average do, you say 10 to 14,000 miles, I assume we expect the new used buses to last at least 5 years on average, or?
Oh yes. Given our cycle, they should at least probably be almost 6 to 7 years that we have them in our fleet. Especially with the ones that we're buying being, I believe it's 2017 and a couple 2016s. Because just through history, there were some buses that were bought that were 5 years old or 4 years old. So obviously that you're going to have a quicker cycle on some of those.
And the question I ask every year is, and it's still more cost effective to continue this cycle and work with buses this way than to outsource.
Yes, especially given the level, and Ali can probably speak to some of the finances, given the level of service that we provide, the amount of trips we do for our specials, for our activity runs that we do, it's definitely the cheapest way for us to operate this way.
Thank you.
And just to add on that a lot of school districts who have outside providers, they have received increases of over 30%.
Right.
So it's cost efficient in-house.
Thank you very much.
Okay. The next item is up for discussion the asbestos abatement 2018 summer work. Mr. Fuhrer, I believe, is going to discuss.
So this has taken a little bit of a twist for us as of this past weekend. I was in the process last week of issuing our state notices and our school notices that have to be put out certain time frames ahead of the work. And in that process, I was continuing to have conversations with different folks, maintenance folks in the school. I was getting some conflicting verbal comments about what was abated, what wasn't abated, and I just wanted to double check and make sure we were hitting the areas, because I couldn't prove it with our documentation in-house. So without that proof, I always go to another test. The gentleman up here in the front row is Mr. Camplin from Camplin Environmental. He is the firm I brought in to do that secondary test. And we took the test. The first tests were done as a PLM. It's I'll let Jeff give me the definition of that. It's protracted light, polarized light microscopy. I can't even say the word. Sorry. Anyways, so we took the test to the TEM approach, and that's the IDPH and EPA standard of what you would test to if you have a doubt. And those tests came back negative for us. So this resulted on us late Friday. So in concert with Mr. Camplin and Weber Group, the first folks who did the test, as of this morning, Weber took their prior samples and sent them out to be tested to the TEM level to confirm their first samples. Jeff today went out and took more samples from different locations just to make sure we didn't cherry pick by accident locations that were going to be negative for us. So we took other locations within those same areas to prove those results. They're being done both by PLM and TEM. We'll have the TEM results tomorrow morning or tomorrow sometime, and our other vendor will have their TEM results by Wednesday. So as you will see in the motion that you're going to have for tonight, there's a one-sentence amendment per our attorney's conversation today to add that you can award the contract pending positive results from our tests. So that way we don't have to come back together. If the results come back positive, the contract's awarded and we move forward. The tests come back negative, contract is not awarded, and it's off the table. So we can do that with the one action and not have to come back together. And that's how I'm trying to plan to proceed tonight. So that's a lot of juggling at the end with the attorneys trying to get that language to be right so we can do the motion that way. And this work, just to kind of back up, this work is for floor work at Deerfield. It's for the main office, the deans, CCRC, counselors, and the aisles in the auditorium is what's looking to be abated. Basically, it's carpet removal, and the mastic behind the carpet is what's potentially got asbestos.
Anybody else have any questions or discussions? Let's discuss further discussion. Elena?
Moving forward, are we at the point where we will no longer need asbestos abatement in either building?
No.
Oh dear.
No.
Is not the answer.
With the age of our buildings, we have to assume there's abatement every year because anytime you open up a new space, get behind a new wall, you have that potential. And another thing that was a practice from years ago, and I've learned this in prior lives in prior districts, even though an area may have been abated, they took the tile off. Sometimes they left the mastic because they were saving a few pennies. So now when we go back to do that area again, we have to literally abate it again. So even though an area may have been partially, and the problem is the notes don't say partially abated. They say they took off this one material. They may not have said that there's 3 other materials below that has asbestos in it still. So we can't always assume that abatement means that it was fully done through time. So we're always testing and always double checking. One of the things we will be doing going forward is we will not be using the PLM approach anymore. We will be using the TEM on everything we're testing. It is a hair more in cost on the test, but they've come down through time, and it is definitely the best way, and bar none, the best result you're going to get with confidence. So we'll be changing our procedures going forward as well. And in discussion with our contractor, the PLM was the prior approach that they want that was used historically, but we're going to make that little change.
Okay. The next item up for discussion is the board member vacancy. I just wanted to make sure that everyone saw the letter that went out to the community, and I don't know if anybody had any additional questions. Our process still remains the same. The timetable is still, applications are still being accepted through June 15th at 4 p.m. I don't know if anybody else had any further questions.
So I know we discussed the process last time, and I know I said that you convinced me about the closed session, but I do want to say that I don't see the downside to doing it in open session. I see a downside to doing it in closed session, but I'm not sure what the downside is to doing the open session interviews.
I agree with Gail, and I voiced that opinion at the last meeting as well. I think, especially in the current atmosphere, it would be really important for people to know who the finalists are and where they stand on different issues.
I would also agree. I think our hybrid, it wasn't a full open session. We obviously did a hybrid, as was pointed out. So it was some closed, some open, just to give the candidates the opportunity to say what they wanted to say, and then for the community to just hear sort of who we had decided we wanted to come forward.
Understanding, I guess I just want to say a couple things. I don't believe it is that the policy says that we do or we don't. The policy says that we hold it. It actually says that we hold it in closed session. The fact that you have the ability to hold it in open session. I think the fact that we are placing somebody on the board to work with us is the reason that it is not so much an issue of transparency as it is an issue of somebody working with the six of us. One of the other things that I said at the last meeting is that I understand that there is an issue of trust between the community and us for various reasons. It's not just who becomes a board member, because most of us that are sitting at this table were chosen at the polls. We were all chosen at the polls. Well, most of us were chosen at the polls. Okay. Most of us were chosen at the polls. Nobody stands over you and looks to see who you're writing down on that piece of paper. But the community does come out, and the room isn't packed when those of us go to those forums and speak at those forums. There's very often the same group of people that come and listen to those people speak, and they are not all recorded. And even when they are recorded, not everybody goes and watches them. And I understand that there are many people that want to know who is sitting at this table. I would like to think that the community understands that anybody that sits at this table represents anybody that lives in 106, 112, 109, and 113. And that is the way it's supposed to be. And that whoever the group of us sitting here chooses would be somebody who represents 109, 112, 113, and 106. Hey, I got it. So, I understand what you're saying. There comes a time that I don't know. I'm the meanest mom in Highland Park. I had more rules than most of my peers. I had more rules than Carter's has pills. I know it's an old expression. I didn't make it up. Many people in the room won't know what I'm talking about. But it is, at some point, maybe this is not the time to draw a line in the sand, but at some point, policy and procedure and protocol has to start coming back to the table and has to start forming the way that we're going to move forward. And it's not punitive. It's not meant to be punitive. It's meant to be structural. And that is, I guess, the reason why maybe to start now. And if we don't start now, then do we start the next time? And do we start the next time? And do we start the next time? I know that everybody feels we have healing to do, and I agree there's healing to do, but I think there's healing to do for different reasons that everybody else thinks. So when do we start going back to the procedures and the policies the way they are written. When does that start? I'm going to make a really silly analogy right now. Those of you that are recent grandparents, you know that there's this whole thing called swaddling now. And many of you that are grandparents now know that your children who are swaddling their grandchildren were not swaddled. However, they've grown to the age of being able to have children without having been swaddled, and they were fine. And so my joke with my children is, when do they want to not feel like they are in the womb anymore? When, I mean, they're out of the womb, so there you want them to still feel like they're in the womb. So when does that stop? So I guess what I'm trying to say is, when do you stop feeling like, when do you stop that line? So there's my analogy. Okay? I just thought of that. And I was trying to end lightly, but I'm trying to kind of draw a picture. I'm trying to decide when we stop nurturing and start acting.
So, oh, geez, that's really loud. I wasn't present, as we know, for part of the closed session and even the open session last time. I did watch them, actually. And last time I sat here and said, one of the things is the board is the group, as the 6 of us in consensus, are going to choose the 7th board member. So to have candidates stand up there and then necessarily that, even though they give their opinion, the people in the audience don't get to vote. Having said that, I actually pulled the policy up, which is in the thing, and it says, after reviewing the applications, the board may invite the prospective candidates for personal interviews to be conducted during duly scheduled closed meetings, which actually suggests to me we could just decide on applications alone. I mean, you don't have to do anything, is what it really says. I mean, we could just decide. Mm-hmm. Given where we are right now, I am comfortable doing the hybrid again. So the recognition that the board is going to make the decision, and the board might make a decision that people, after what they hear, might even be not what they want. I mean, but they still get to hear something. So I am comfortable with it. I'm hopeful that, like last time, we'll have 2 very strong candidates. So it's a win-win. But I guess I would be the 4th then to say that standing here looking at the policy and recognizing Debbie's point last time, which is we have to get trust, and to some extent it does go both ways. So I do feel like kind of giving so that for me alone, to help develop more trust again. But the bottom line is that you could argue, as I think Debbie did last time, that the community also should trust. It goes both ways. Mm-hmm. And that we shouldn't have to do that publicly because we are going to make that decision. But again, having said that, I am comfortable doing a hybrid. So again, meaning there will be things, in my mind, we would still have a closed session so that we could do things in closed session and ask things that may not be as appropriate to be an open, and then still do open, maybe not, they were 45 minutes each, maybe a half hour, maybe 15 minutes, whatever it is, but to do something that would at least introduce, assuming there were 2 candidates or however many finalists, I would be comfortable with that hybrid for this time. But I cede to my fellow board member that I absolutely understand what you're saying, and I actually applaud our president for trying to be more policy and procedurally focused than I feel like we've been since I've been on the board. So, but having said that, I believe that makes me the 4th member willing to
I think what someone is here is asking, and I don't, what happened before, what happened in the past, what happened in November, notwithstanding the fact that, yes, I was on the board, is sort of irrelevant. What you're asking is for us to break policy. That's what is being asked. We're being asked to, as a board, decide to break policy. Huh?
I don't believe it's breaking policy.
Well, it is, because that's what our policy says. I can read it.
Well, Stacy just read it.
Yeah, but that's what the policy, that's what our policy says. So if that's what the board, if somebody wants to make the appropriate motion to do that, then we can consider that. But this isn't just kind of like discussion. I will say that as far as whether or not this provides transparency, I fail to see how it provides transparency. I believe that what happened last time is it turned the process into a public, a pseudo or quasi-public election, which is not what not what it's supposed to be. We received multiple emails and texts and phone calls, more for one candidate than the other, and they were canned emails that, it looked like somebody said, hey, send this, everybody needs to send this to the board in support of this candidate or that candidate, and it was the same email over and over and over and over and over again. I don't, again, do I know that all those people watched the video? I don't know. Do I know that all those people, actually had an opinion about the two candidates? I don't, because all I got was a bunch of, the same emails over and over and over again. Copied and pasted, copied and pasted. I know a lot of stuff like that goes on in public elections. It goes on, and it's, again, but everybody does when the voters go to the polls and they get to decide who I want to vote for, who do I believe. I go to forums, I go to this, who do I vote for. In this situation, the community just by law, they don't get a vote. So to say that this creates transparency, I just fail to understand how that it creates transparency. So if someone wants to make that motion, that, again, go ahead. But to say that we're doing it to provide more transparency when we're the ones still voting, I think what it is going to add is it's going to make us have to spend more time and have to have another meeting to have this all happen in the short period of time that we have. It could potentially deter candidates from applying who, I don't know. I'm just saying. So if somebody wants to make a motion, go ahead.
I move that we use a hybrid. Use your mic. Excuse me.
You move that we are going to go off policy? Is that what that's what you're doing?
I'm going to move that we use the hybrid model that we use.
It's not. That's not the proper motion, Elena. If you want to, we have to consider a proper motion.
Okay.
Which we have been for really 7 years.
So you would want me to say in this motion that we are going against policy 270?
That's what we're doing.
We didn't.
Can someone read the
We
motion
didn't last
again?
time.
Because it.
You mean the policy?
I mean the policy. Yeah, sorry.
I'll read it.
We didn't even get to the motion. Sorry.
Stacy has it. Do you have it up still?
It's right here. It's right here. Immediately following a vacancy on the board, the board will publicize it and accept resumes from district residents who are interested in filling the vacancy. After reviewing the applications, the board may invite the prospective candidates for personal interviews to be conducted during duly scheduled closed meetings.
Okay. I believe the operative word there is may, which would
may invite.
Yes, may invite to
closed
in
session.
Yes, and
Anything about open.
I propose a motion that we conduct both closed session and open session interviews for the replacement board member.
Second. Is there any other discussion on this motion? No?
No discussion on the motion, but I do recommend that this policy go back to the policy committee at some point to maybe either clarify or allow for more flexibility in this process.
Okay. I will, since we do, before we get there, I do have some discussion as well, is that to the extent that there are applications already in, I don't know that those applicants may or may not want to, may or may not withdraw the applications. I don't know, because this was
changed quite a bit last time. When I applied, it was not open session interview, so I don't know that it will deter people, but they will have to speak publicly and sit up here at the table, so. they're not comfortable, then maybe we should know at the beginning.
Okay.
You didn't do a vote yet.
Huh? No, I know. Yeah, do a roll call.
Ms. Selby?
Aye.
Ms. Bick?
Aye.
Ms. Culver?
Aye.
Ms. Hyman?
Nay.
Ms. Meyer?
Aye.
Ms. Garlowski?
Nay. Guess the motion passes. Okay. Why did I lose my spot here?
Committees.
Here?
On the board ed committee.
Oh, yeah. So we're going to go just, I wanted to, I had Romina kind of revise. We're going to the Board of Education committees, especially in light of the fact that we won't have a new board member until the next meeting. I felt we could have the committee assignments pushed off for another meeting, and we redid the list to, I believe, represent where we left off last time with our discussion, as far as what the different categories are, and if anybody has any additional discussion in reviewing this list. We did add the negotiations committee because that had somehow fallen off, and we're going to need that. Or if anybody has any further comments about kind of what committees, yay, nay, anything, I think.
Right, so for me, technology and facilities, if we do them, I wonder if they could be combined and/or combined with finance, some of them. I don't know what the appropriate makeup of those would be. I mean, those are would be new committees for us. I mean, it could be a technology and facilities. Depending on who it is, and that I'm saying, or literally, again, I don't know if, or facilities as part of the finance committee, because it feels like they might go hand in hand. I don't know. That's what
Or it could be a committee that doesn't necessarily meet monthly, or it could be quarterly. It could be not necessarily a regular. I mean, you're talking about the level of commitment.
Right, or what, right, even I don't really know exactly what would go on, but to me it feels like it would flow into finance very often. So that's why, but again, it could be, I don't know if it would be a meeting twice a year or just the contact people for the board on those types of things, I don't know.
Something that I would hope if we're having these committees, because what has happened in the past when we've had some of these smaller committees, at least on this board, meaning the 113 board, not the current people sitting here, is that when there are, other than these standard committees that are here, when we've had various committees, there has not been a report back to this body. And technically, if you are representative of this board on a particular committee, there should be a report back at some point to this body of what you're doing, what's taking place. And that has in the past caused some difficulties, which I believe has led to something that I alluded to previously at our last meeting, to the lack of trust at this table, which then goes to the lack of trust between this table and the community. So if we are going to set up these committees, then whatever takes place at those meetings, there has to be and I understand that may mean in addition to our agenda. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's an agenda item on both meetings of the month, but at least we could stagger it where It's not part of board report. It could be at some, it doesn't have to be all the agendas, because obviously these committees may not meet monthly, they may meet quarterly, but at least there has to be some reporting function of those committees. Otherwise, I would say no to those committees, because that has been a problem in the past. We have to know what's happening.
I agree with Debbie's point, and I wonder, like with the standing committees like finance, we usually had board members that had some expertise in that area. I'm looking at, you know what I'm thinking, right? I'm thinking, okay, so I'm looking at technology and facilities. I'm not sure if we would have board members at present or in the future with that expertise, but I would love to get the report from our experts.
Ideally,
what do you think? Yeah.
We're talking hybrids tonight. Can I give you my hybrid? My previous board experience was that somebody who didn't have an expertise in a particular area served on that committee. So, for example, somebody who was not a finance person was on the finance committee, because that gave them the ability to learn that part of the board, of the board work. So they weren't the very detailed person, but they had an understanding. So I understand board finance enough to vote. When I need a little bit more explanation, I will call the CFO. I haven't ever served on the finance committee. However, I might be a good type of person to serve on finance, because I would look at it with the eye of a board member. So you don't have to be a facilities person to serve on the facilities, or somebody who's very good at technology. That gives board members a Deerfield, somebody who lives in Deerfield doesn't only serve committees for Deerfield or Highland Park. The understanding, we serve the entire community. We serve everything that the district represents.
Right.
So if we just went to what our expertise is, I wouldn't serve on any committee, basically. Because there's no real estate committee. I mean, there's not a mom committee, and I can't serve on the PTO, but that's basically all I could do.
But you're wonderful on policy, Debbie.
I'm great on policy. That's only because I'm type A, okay?
Yes.
But do you understand? I mean, so the idea is for us that's a way to learn about, being a board member.
Yeah, I think that's I think it's a great point. And actually, when I served on the oversight committee,
right,
that was some of the discussion was, not an architect, but there were people who may have had more experience at the time with that, and they put me on. And to some extent, some of the questions I might ask might be more basic and make sure that nobody's thinking, because I'm not thinking of it up there. So it is an interesting, different perspective, because I'd ask something very basic to ensure that kind of the lowest level was being met.
That's what I was going to say, is sort of like being more of the average citizen,
right,
and making sure that it can be explained in a way that the community can understand, and that we can, translate that, and that, things are kind of simplified.
Having said all that, please don't put me on the finance committee. Just saying.
See, I was thinking Michelle would be great.
I don't need to learn it, nor do I think anyone wants to take the time to teach me. So.
Okay, so
Just putting it out there.
as far as the new committees, because we sort of need to then figure out if you want to continue with these new committees. The negotiations committee, we need that. Yes. Okay. Facilities and technology, do we want to just do we want to table that for now, and maybe when the school year starts up again, and when we have
One of my questions, do we think the administration thinks, would they think it benefits them to have a board committee that would help facilitate the conversation?
They're all shaking their heads, so
that's right. So then I would suggest.
Well, this is where I got the idea in the first place. Was talking to
Right, but
Not
then
the reason.
right, but
No.
so then I.
Okay, so we can let the committee. Well, we can work to develop how often the committee might meet or what the committee might do. as we go, we can agree that we're going to have these committees.
Yeah.
Just for clarification, are we combining tech and facilities, or are they separate entities?
They seem separate.
Okay.
I was going to say, I trust our president to work with the administration and determine what the best.
I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to do that.
Kind of come forward with frequency.
Happy to do that.
She was asking us, so we're just telling her.
Happy to do that. And then I don't remember where we, Student Advisory Committee, I don't remember where we landed with that, but one of the things that, one of the reasons why I had put that on there originally was because I do know that there are some school boards that have student board members, and so whereas that's not necessarily a committee.
Is that separate from the board rep? I mean, do they
Yes,
board
no,
reps
they
and
come,
additional people?
they
or
come
the
to the
board reps
table,
kind
they
of-
come to the table, they can't vote, but it's right, no, it's not, they're not reporting from the schools, they're actually part of the discussion. And I think it's something that we should really consider, that it might be, especially again, given, you know, our desire to engage our stakeholders as much as we can, the fact that we could have students, and maybe it's one from each high school, I don't know. And I don't know what, you know, we'd probably have to go through some type of application process or something like that, but I think to maybe our principals could help us determine if there's interest, or do a survey or something like that to find out if there's interest. I think it could be something starting maybe with the new school year that could be beneficial. I don't know. Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
I read an article about what, Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Actually look them, like, contact them or start their process.
I think this is a great idea to have the Student Advisory Committee. Last meeting, we also talked about a community outreach, communication type of committee, culture. I don't see that on the list. Do we?
So,
is there
yeah,
some discussion about that?
there was a little bit of discussion about that. I think what maybe we may want to talk about beyond just having a committee is actually having us engage. And again, this will have to probably be an agenda item on another agenda, but just to bring it up, as opposed to just a committee, maybe actually having our district, having our board do a true community engagement process, where we engage in the two-way dialogue with our stakeholders. You know, not just citizens' comments back and forth, but there's a true community and stakeholder engagement process that we can engage in as a board that's facilitated in a very organized way, and that may be something that could be I think could be very productive and very, I'm not knocking the committee, we can do that too, but I think that the committee may, this engagement process may be, actually be able to reach more people.
I feel like IASB has
Yep.
workshops in that.
Yep.
To figure out how to do that appropriately.
Yep, so I'm happy to put that on we can put that on an agenda maybe for next month, just to start the process of that.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Right, thank you, I like that, and I think I was the person who talked about it first, and also think that it's possible, once our new superintendent, that might be a committee they want to put together
Exactly.
somehow
I
and
just,
decide if they want a
before
board
we
member
set
on
that
it,
committee
but
up now, just might be.
just to say that something we should be working on. So I
Yeah, and
like
maybe
idea of doing
the community engagement process would then dictate what do we really need, what do we really need to keep people engaged and keep people, so, okay. Just then go through the external committee organizations again. We did discuss that some of these organizations, you know, there may be different ways that as the liaisons can work with the presidents, for example, or boards of those organizations in a more efficient way. So there may be a point, you know, instead of having, you know, one person for Highland Park PTO and one person for Deerfield PTO, maybe just we have one PTO liaison, and then that PTO liaison figures out how they want to work with the PTOs and get information back to the board. So that was just something that I'm thinking of. The foundation, District 113 Foundation, just to, we're not really sure what shape that's going to take yet. We are in the process of, our attorneys are reviewing the bylaws. There's been a bunch of changes to the bylaws, and we're just not sure if what exactly our involvement can or should be based on the current bylaws, and there may have to be some changes. So we just really can't assign anybody right now. There's just there's just too much confusion. And other than that, I think unless anyone else has any other comments or discussions.
No, so it's back to a little bit about what Debbie said earlier, which is if people sit on committees, they should share, and certainly some of the committees are different than other. NSSED has a lot more, I think, that needs to be sharing. So I did sit on, I'm on Waltersfield and the Booster
Oh, yes,
Club
Waltersfield.
and policy. Right, so Waltersfield, though, is something where it meets twice a year, and after the meeting, I do come back and say something. When I attend the Giants Club, the Booster Club for Highland Park, I don't usually say something because there isn't that much to say. However, I believe actually you were the one who said that Deerfield was talking about a scoreboard and they were as well. So I did share with them that there's a policy and they'd have to come to us that, and then I shared that. But often there'd be months where I'd go and there'd be no need to say anything. So I just want to be clear
So
that.
I guess what I'm talking about, I wasn't talking about those.
Okay, so that's
as
very
much
clear.
as there were certain committees that grew out of our first two attempts at, and I'm not going to say it wasn't our first strategic plan, it was the newer strategic plan because the district did have one before. It was called the long-range plan, not a strategic plan. But when we, our effort with STIG, there were certain committees that grew out of that, and they were committees that were to gather certain types of information, whether it was curricular or it was, and then there were committees that grew out of another process that we started at this board table, and there were 2 or 3 people that started on that. You were on one with David, and you were on one with Julie or whatever, and then Elena was on one, either curricular or some interview, something, and that information, I know there was a lot of meeting going on at the back of a room after policy once, and we never got any of that information. And so what happens then is there are board members that have certain information and from various administrative members, and the rest of the board does not have that information, and that is not the way we're supposed to function. So the idea of serving on a committee as a representative of the Board of Education is you then share that information with the rest of the group. And that's why we're not supposed to be sharing information in emails to each other afterwards, because that is a violation of Open Meetings Act. The only time we are supposed to be sharing information with each other is at these meetings. Either at these meetings, and closed session information is the stuff that's approved for closed session is at our closed session meetings. If we're doing it any other way other than the correspondence that we get, that's all a violation. That's communicating. We're not supposed to be doing that. So that's why that's the kind of information I'm talking about. Booster Club,
right.
If you're just sitting there and listening, if there's nothing to share, don't share. I'm talking about those kinds of, that kind of substantive committee work, technology, facilities. If you're going to talk about curriculum, first of all, we shouldn't be sitting on a curriculum committee, that kind of stuff.
Totally agree. Just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Well, and I think that's why Lizzie initially did the committee versus liaison,
right,
to make that clear distinction.
Yes, thank you.
The booster clubs, just as same with the PTO, I think it would be appropriate to have one booster club liaison, and then that person can figure out how they want to, again, so you don't have to attend every meeting necessarily. You could, and I actually talked to what the former Deerfield PTO president about this, who said, the idea of sharing their minutes, that it makes a lot of sense, because we are not supposed to be sharing things at these meetings. We are not giving reports. We're not supposed to be doing that. We're supposed to be potentially receiving certain information in order to share it with the community and to just listen. So anyway, anybody have any other discussion? Anything else to say about committees?
Thank you.
So, okay, so I will, presumably after we, at the next board meeting, where we will be seating our new board member, I will hope to have an action item to establish committees and have the appointments. I am happy to take any, people's, Michelle's already, that's the second time I've heard that she doesn't want to be on the finance committee.
I was gonna mention that before.
Yeah.
Oh.
Happy to take people's whatever
Personally, Ellie.
input.
Yeah, it's not you, it's me.
I've heard about that.
It was fascinating.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
I be happy to take people's, if you want, give me your sort of top choices or whatnot. I'm happy to try to consider everybody's.
Put me where you need me. But I do want an SSCD. I want to finish up.
Okay. Next, we are going to, yes. Yeah, we're going to just general talk about the interim superintendent search and the just an update on the process, which I sort of gave in the beginning. Just so everybody is aware, we are the board did decide to move forward with a search for an interim superintendent. The application period, we had posted the job, and that the end of that the posting closed Friday evening. We have received a lot of applications, and the board met earlier in closed session to begin reviewing the applications together as a board. And we have scheduled interviews we haven't scheduled, the scheduled date for interviews is the 19th, and we are going to have our stakeholder committee meeting on the 14th. Speaking of the stakeholder committee, I just wanted to elaborate a little bit more about how that all came together, and just to give everyone an idea of what my process was and is. Again, as I mentioned earlier, that after we all decided that we're going to, on our process on June 1st, I immediately began to seek recommendations from a variety of sources, and a lot of you gave me various recommendations. People contacted me directly, and it has been my main goal to be as absolutely fair as possible and try to, use a lot of objective criteria to appoint the committee members, again, in accordance with board policy. I reached out to PTO exec board members, as I said, and our student board representatives. I specifically spoke with the DEA former president and current president, and several other people to form this list. Granted, I tried to I sent out an initial list and gave people time to respond. If they didn't respond, we had immediate alternates lined up behind. There was, it was not easy. We didn't get a lot of people who didn't respond. We sent out reminders, and again, people who served in the past, I specifically did not put them on, not for any other reason than to just try to get new and different voices, and to give different people a chance. And I did have several requests from board members from other districts, and just made the decision that just, again, first of all, having to decide amongst the different board members would have been difficult in and of itself, and just sort of to apply across the board criteria that existing board members, just not the committee. So we actually have the list, and do we have it on here? No.
It's on.
Oh. What? You guys have it?
Yeah.
Oh, you have the list. Okay. So you've seen the list, and hold on a second here. You have it. Anyway, one of the things, while she's pulling that up, one of the things that we need to discuss regarding the stakeholder committee is sort of how the meeting on the 14th, exactly how that's going to run. Mr. Creekers is going to be there. It's basically going to be an opportunity for us to train the stakeholders who are going to be there first of all, going over, how important it is that this process remain confidential, and, talking about the questions that are going to be asked. It's also very important, and again, there were certain people who said, well, I can only be there on this day, but I can't be there on that day, or I can be there on this day, but I have to leave early, and we had to turn those people down because every candidate has to be interviewed by the same people, in the same group. So we just couldn't make those kinds of exceptions. So Gail and Debbie are actually going to be the board members that are going to be on the part of the stakeholder committee, and going to be at the meeting on the 14th to help the committee members. I can read.
Can I ask?
Yes, go ahead.
Did we have a certain number of people we were absolutely looking for? And one of the questions is this mean it can't be changed at this point as well? In terms of the number, sorry.
I don't know whose microphone that was. I'm sorry.
Did we have a certain exact, I mean, I know we went out looking and we wanted to represent a whole bunch of different stakeholder groups, but did we say there have to be 18 or 22 or 14 or whatever? Because
we kind of generally discussed a general amount, but unfortunately those numbers just kind of took on, for example, we first talked about, 2 students from each high school or 3. That I ended up sending out multiple invitations to students. We have 1 student from each high school. That's just who we got. So can it be changed? Can we invite more people? I suppose we can, but at some point, again, I'm trying to keep the process, at this point, keep the process fair and keep the process true, that we went at this, sent out the list, you get a chance to respond. If you don't, we're moving down to the alternate. It was and thankful, thank God for Ramina and Christine Gonzalez helped a lot. We had a spreadsheet, and it was being updated on a daily basis. So we have 6 members of the community. When I say members of the community, I mean either someone who's not a student or staff. So anybody else in the community. We have 2 students.
Some are parents and some are not.
Some have kids in the high school and some don't. Yes. 2 students, 7 licensed staff members, 3 support staff members. So, but we sent out, I really couldn't even tell you without going back to the spreadsheet to look at exactly how many invitations were sent out. It was back and forth for several days. So, yes?
Did we send out any invites to building administration? I know we agreed no on the principals, but maybe an assistant principal or dean from each high school?
We did not. I thought we actually sort of discussed that we weren't going to do that.
My recollection was we weren't going to include the principals because it doesn't seem right to, be choosing your boss, but it does feel like it'd be good to have some representation from building administration.
I agree. That's actually why I was asking the question, to see if it
I'm happy to, again, I thought we sort of decided not to go to that level. There was no purposeful exclusion of those individuals.
And that's what jumps out at me as missing.
I would agree.
I'm happy to find out who's around and or available.
There's a layer in between.
Yeah,
So
I'm happy.
There's a level in between, so I think that
Right.
was.
Yeah, we can do that. Oh, I'm sorry, we go back to the list. So I can read the list. But again, I can't sort of stress enough, and all these. Yes. What? Don't want me to read the list?
No. I didn't. You're going to read the list of the ones we were going to, or the ones that are here now?
The ones that we're going to.
This list that we have in front of us.
Who's accepted?
Oh, who's accepted? Oh, okay. I didn't know which list you were reading.
Yeah, I'm just going to read the list, unless anybody has some sort of objection for me reading the list.
No.
Okay. We have Rick Heineman, Hazel Herzog, Brian Browdy, Francie Aronson, Alicia Dela Cruz, Ruth Adler from our community, Spencer Dowell from Highland Park High School, and Reed Brockstein from Deerfield High School. Those are our students. Our staff is Jeff Berger-White from Deerfield, Judy Lukey, Department Chair from Deerfield, Rich Grady, Department Chair from Deerfield, Steve Winicki, Science Teacher from Deerfield, Alicia Margettis, Counselor from Highland Park, Lauren Stillwell, Department Chair from Highland Park, Corin Plata, Science Teacher from Deerfield, and we have Frank Zook, Technology from Deerfield, Joe Ford, Custodian from Highland Park, and Gloria Gibson, Administrative Assistant here at the Ed Building. So that's our list. And we actually still have some open invitations, I think, out that people just have not responded. So, and there were many, many people who either additional, additional invitations that people just either didn't respond to or they responded no. I sent out dozens of invitations.
So should we assume that we tried to balance it between Deerfield and Highland Park, but more Deerfield people were available, more DHS? In terms of the staff?
Yes, we should assume that it was all very balanced, and I sent out, was very careful to be very balanced in every single category.
I did give you the opportunity to say that.
Thank you.
So, I don't know, do we, or something, are we going to reach out then to building administrators to ask?
Yeah, we can send out an invitation tomorrow. You can follow up with Fermina in the morning.
I actually, so you would ask something on the, I have all of my previous binders on searches that I've had the pleasure to serve on since I've been on the board. So even talked about in terms of the actual training or whatever on the 14th, I do have the desired attributes and expectations. So the profile that was developed by all the stakeholders over time for our superintendent. So I think we can start there maybe. And Ramin, I know we have copies for everybody. But even take a look. I mean, I feel like it's still reflective of what we're looking for. I might want to highlight certain things over others right now. But in terms of what we're looking for, I think it did a nice job. And I'm sorry because I'm probably one of, maybe Debbie remembers, but other people I'm sure haven't had time to look at it. And then also in here were the questions previous board had come up with, and then sample questions that other boards have come up with that, again, whether it be to help us or the stakeholder group come up with things that they might want to ask. And my recollection was the stakeholder group questions were different than the board questions. They came up with their own questions. No, you're Debbie. I got there after you did. So
wasn't in my.
Sorry. Okay.
Here, you can look at mine.
That's okay. And do you have yours? I do. Okay. So I thought that could at least help in terms of the training for us. And
yes. Seems like yesterday.
And then Lizzie, so Gail and Debbie, is their role in participating, or are they doing, like, taking notes, or what in terms of the stakeholders? Or historically, I think what we've always done is just pros and cons, like, or I don't know, strengths and adjustment areas, or strengths and concerns, or questions maybe, is how we got feedback back from stakeholder groups previously. So is that, I don't know if we've talked about the role.
I think maybe something that I'm going to recommend is that the two of you meet with Tom Krieger, if you can, before the meeting with the stakeholders, so that you guys can come up with, some sort of organized plan. Because the stakeholders, we're going to have to give them the questions, and I think we even had some questions in citizens' comments tonight, like a request for that they're going to want very specific direction. But yes, what the ultimate goal of this advisory committee is to get feedback from them to for us. And I think we need to be really clear about what feedback we want, how the feedback should be given, because we also, some of the questions that I received from people that were invited on the committee to be on the committee were things like, before they responded, were things like, well, will the committee get the final say? Or, will the committee be able to rank the candidates and things like that? And so, no, the committee, is not going to get the final say. It just sort of doesn't work like that, and we're going to need to be very clear and give really specific direction and instruction to the committee on how this is going to work. And the resumes, once we have the finalists, the resumes, again, this is a highly confidential process, so the resumes don't actually have to be given on the 14th. Again, because that's more just describing the process. The resumes should really be given, we're probably going to, all the committee members were told they have to be available that whole day from 9 to 5. We don't know what time we don't even know who the final candidates are. So once we know who they are, then we schedule those interviews, and then we're going to have to figure out timing, because if you all remember, we're supposed to be reviewing board member applications that day as well. So we'll have to figure out what time the committee should come, and then they will be given the resumes, presumably, just in advance, but with enough time so that they can review them. So again, maybe you guys can, would probably want to meet with Tom to figure out so that there can be like a presentation for them.
Are we assuming that the meeting, the stakeholder committee on the 19th that will be here in this building?
The interviews, you mean? I think we were assuming that. Doesn't have to be. We certainly can, if there's a better, if you think there's a better location to facilitate the different things going on, that's fine. Yeah, that makes sense.
We'll have to go on the other.
Yep.
We meet off-site last time.
We did for some of, we've had.
For interim.
No, we did them
We
here.
did meet here?
Right.
Okay.
The one question is,
Principal search, we met over at the
Right.
transportation building.
Okay, thank you.
for the timing, if Debbie and Gail are they're going to have to be in both sets of interviews, so we're going to have to think about that.
No, actually, what we were thinking is that just Tom would be in the interviews with the
Okay, so
committee,
they're just
so
gonna
that they'll be in
okay,
the
that's what I
interview with the board. Yeah,
Fine. Perfect.
No, we're just
I
talking
didn't
to them
understand that.
Thursday night. We're training.
just so
We're
that
not-
there's someone here from the
okay, that's what I
board.
didn't understand.
Yes,
Thank you.
We're
yes.
instructing,
More sense.
training them.
So
Yes.
Tom will facilitate a discussion with the stakeholder committee after, so they can,
Right.
however.
The three of you are going to facilitate the training on the 14th with the committee.
Interviews.
Yes.
How are we getting
Tom.
their feedback?
You guys are gonna figure that out.
So we do need to figure that out because it's a matter of, does the communication ever, want to communicate directly with the board or?
Very open-ended.
Right.
That's why we're here to discuss it.
The previous ones,
It's
right.
done on paper.
They just copy,
It's,
right.
no, it's done on paper, guys. It's,
Right.
There's, the way that stakeholders communicate with the board is done on paper.
Right.
It's the
So we've
format,
literally
that's the way
gotten-
it's always done,
Right.
and it's going to be when we go through, the permanent superintendent search, it's going to be the same thing. That's how the stakeholders communicate with the board.
So,
And their evaluation, whatever form we come up with.
so each
feedback is done on
stakeholder
paper.
will give us
Mhm.
their
Yes,
opinion?
yes,
It
on
won't
each
be it won't be a
candidate. Correct.
consensus
It's all done
document.
on paper, and then
Okay.
we look at it, and it's anonymous.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I have, again, not that they're necessarily forms, but the old forms that were used are in some of my binder somewhere.
This is helpful.
Right.
So we do have a former 109 board one of the committee members is a former 109 board member. One of the community members is a PTO on Highland Park PTO's exec board. Just so you guys all sort of know some of the other things about them.
Just names, right?
And two retired teachers who live in the community are part of the. And one of our community members also has a child who's in one of the center districts, so if trying to get those types of voices too.
One other question. So since, again, we know who the applicants are. Having said that, in terms of vetting and things, as we're moving forward, I assume we're going to start vetting people as they're going through the process, so we have enough time to do anything we need to do. Meaning once we're narrowing, we got a bunch of applications. Once we narrow who's going forward, I feel like instead of waiting until historically you'd know who it was and you'd do your deep vetting, we can have to kind of parallel path a little bit.
Especially because Tom leaves on the 21st.
Right, that's what I was thinking, right. So just kind of putting it out there that we can figure out. Right, whether it be toning or a school, whatever it is, but.
Yeah, there's also.
There are services too,
exactly.
actually, that even
Yep.
I know that historically, but just so we,
yes.
again, the timing to make sure
like
that
background check type of stuff, all that kind of thing, yeah.
Right,
yep.
Instead of waiting till after, yep.
Yeah, no, we don't really have time for that.
Right.
Huh?
I said thank you. You've been doing a lot of hard work.
She doesn't need
you.
to sleep.
Sleep is overrated. Does anyone else have anything else they want to add or questions or anything? This is kind of, one opportunity that we're all here together and before obviously, huh?
It'll work.
It'll work?
It'll work. Because it must.
Huh?
Because it must.
Right.
Well, there was, really, it hasn't just been me doing all the work. All the people sitting at that table and this one right here has been doing a tremendous amount of work, sort of helping to organize all this and taking in, again, getting this committee together and just helping with the application process. And it's a lot of people helping. So
I thank Tom at least 3 times today. So
Yes,
okay.
thank you, everyone.
Okay. Last chance. Okay, so we are then going to move to the.
I'm sorry, actually do one thing.
Yeah.
So you said that there are still kind of invites out there outstanding. So at some point, if we just get when we get, I don't know how long.
Well,
we have
technically
until
today,
we get-
to be honest, technically today at noon was done. We were done, and so if those people, though, the people who have invitations outstanding, if they came back and said, I'm not going to turn them down.
Right.
As far as, and now we're agreeing that we want to get some administrators, okay, but that beyond that, I actually think that we just have to. It has to stop at
No,
some
right.
point,
I just
right?
want to make sure we get the final list at some point.
Yeah.
when it
So
was-
there, and again, there's people in like every category still sort of outstanding. We also, I think, have to, again, and this is why it was difficult, because you have to think, like, do you want 50 people on the committee and then the candidate sitting there in front of 50 people? I think that would be kind of, I don't know, might be hard to get through the interview. But so I'm happy to, again, people who have had the invitations, if they just respond and they missed it today or whatever, again, because this was, people may not be around or whatever, happy to, if they've got invited, but I don't think we can extend extra invitations at this point. It just, again, I just don't think it would be fair to the process, especially now. Okay. Yes, moving on. All right. We're now going to talk about the referendum dedication plaques. And Mr. Fuhrer had asked that we have this on the agenda because they are ready to go.
They're ready to go, ready to be installed or it could be by this week, later this week. Just wanted final confirmation because there was a question brought up about some individuals on there, but that's who was here at the time. There are people that have come and gone and all that, but just wanted to give the board a chance to have that conversation in public. If there's any questions, there may not be.
So the rendering below is the clearer picture of what, basically it's the above is a picture of the actual plaque itself.
Yeah, if you scroll, there should be pictures below that.
Right. The pictures below are what-
Yeah, so you can read those.
It's easier to read.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
So will they be installed with a cover over them so that we unveil them?
Yeah, they'll go in the same places the current temporary ones are located. They'll be covered, and then we can arrange a
ceremony or whatever.
Yep.
Okay. I thought you wanted to make sure no one was going to vandalize. Sorry.
All right, we have the,
I think they look great.
yeah, they look nice. We have the oversight committee on there, good.
Feel good? Yeah. Yes, thank you.
I think they look
Yeah,
great,
thank you.
and
They look great.
everybody on, everyone's names on there did a lot of hard work. So,
Okay. Thank you.
thanks, John. Yep.
Thank you very much.
Okay, moving right along. We'll now go to our action items. And this is the first one, the asbestos abatement 2018 summer work. This was turned into the good news, right, Mr. Fuhr?
We're waiting.
Waiting, but
We're
that's
still
the,
waiting. As of a little while ago, we actually got partial results back on one, but it's only through the PLM test, so I really don't state where we're at with that. It may end up being somewhere in between is where this may ultimately end. So that's why you have an amended action item to read, because it just adds the language that I talked to the attorneys about tonight to give us the flexibility to award or not award based on those results.
Got it. But it's different than the original motion.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. It's recommended that the board award. Oh, I'm still reading the wrong one. You don't have to. Oh, it doesn't know where mine is. Okay. It's recommended that the board award a contract to HEPA Incorporated in the amount of $131,600 for the asbestos abatement work for summer renovations of 2018, pending positive asbestos test results no later than 6 p.m. Wednesday, June 13th. Otherwise, reject all bids. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Okay, seeing there's no further discussion, a roll call, please.
Ms. Culver?
Aye.
Ms. Hyman?
Aye.
Ms. Meyer?
Aye.
Ms. Welby?
Aye.
Ms. Bick?
Aye.
Ms. Garlowski?
Aye. Motion passes. Okay, it is recommended that the board authorize renewal of membership in the Illinois Association of School Boards for the 2018-19 school year at a cost of $11,745. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing there's no further discussion, a roll call, please.
Ms. Bick?
Aye.
Ms. Hyman?
Aye.
Ms. Meyer?
Aye.
Ms. Welby?
Aye.
Ms. Culver?
Aye.
Ms. Garlowski?
Aye. Motion passes. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the Highland Park High School World Languages International trip to Ecuador from June 10th, 2019 through June 19th, 2019. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Seeing as there is no further discussion, a roll call, please.
Ms. Hyman?
Aye.
Ms. Meyer?
Aye.
Ms. Welby?
Aye.
Ms. Culver?
Aye.
Ms. Bick?
Aye.
Ms. Garlowski?
Aye. Motion passes. It is recommended that the Board of Education adopt policies 6-200 and 8-45 as presented. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Seeing that there is no further discussion, a roll call, please.
Ms. Meyer?
Aye.
Ms. Welby?
Aye.
Ms. Culver?
Aye.
Ms. Bick?
Aye.
Ms. Hyman?
Aye.
Ms. Garlowski?
Aye. Motion passes. It is recommended that the Board of Education appoint Ms. Ramina Isaac and Ms. Elizabeth Garlewski as the Open Meetings Act designees, and Mr. Thomas Krieger, Mr. Ali Mahanti, and Ms. Ramina Isaac as the Freedom of Information Act officers, effective June 11, 2018. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
I don't do that on purpose.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the school treasurer's surety bond in the amount of million of coverage per statutory requirements. It is further moved that the President and Secretary be authorized to sign the bond surety certificate and that all documentation be filed with the appropriate parties. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Yeah. What is that exactly? Because I'll be signing it, apparently? No, just an explanation of what that is.
So by law, the district is required to set a bond for the school district treasurer in case of any fraud.
Okay.
So that is bought through the insurance.
Okay.
So we have to do that annually.
All right, thanks.
And it's based on the 25% of fund balance.
Got it. Thank you.
Seeing as there's no further discussion, a roll call, please.
Ms. Selby?
Aye.
Ms. Colbert?
Aye.
Ms. Fick?
Aye.
Ms. Hyman?
Aye.
Ms. Meyer?
Aye.
Ms. Garlowski?
Aye, motion passes. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the attached prevailing wage resolution for publication in the local newspaper. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Mr. Mahanti, do you want to give a just brief explanation of why we,
I'll let Mr. Fuhrer
or
talk
Mr.
about
Fuhrer?
This is one of those statutory requirements. Every year, the board has to file it, and it gets recorded with the state that we're following prevailing wage.
Thank you. Seeing as there's any further discussion? No? Seeing as there's no further discussion, a roll call, please.
Ms. Colbert?
Aye.
Ms. Fick?
Aye.
Ms. Hyman?
Aye.
Ms. Meyer?
Aye.
Ms. Selby?
Aye.
Ms. Garlowski?
Aye, motion passes. It is recommended that the Board of Education adopt the resolution transferring interest from the working cash fund to the education fund of Township High School District Number 113 as presented. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Nope. Seeing as there's no further discussion, a roll call, please.
Ms. Fick?
Aye.
Ms. Hyman?
Aye.
Ms. Meyer?
Aye.
Ms. Selby?
Aye.
Ms. Colbert?
Aye.
Ms. Garlowski?
Aye, motion passes. It is recommended that the Board of Education adopt the resolution transferring interest from the bond and interest fund to the operations fund of Township High School District Number 113 as presented. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing as there's no discussion, a roll call, please.
Ms. Hyman?
Aye.
Ms. Meyer?
Aye.
Ms. Selby?
Aye.
Ms. Colbert?
Aye.
Ms. Fick?
Aye.
Ms. Garlowski?
Aye, motion passes. It is now recommended that the consent agenda be approved as listed. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, and Elena is going to provide us with a report on the bills.
Yes. We looked at 5 different bills this evening with Mr. Mahanti, and everything was in good order, and he had good explanations for any follow-up or detailed questions that I might have. I learned a lot.
Excellent. Thank you. Is there any further discussion? No? Seeing this, that there is none, a roll call, please.
Ms. Meyer?
Aye.
Ms. Selby?
Aye.
Ms. Colbert?
Aye.
Ms. Fick?
Aye.
Ms. Hyman?
Aye.
Ms. Garlowski?
Aye, motion passes. Okay, we are now coming to our second citizens comments period. Are there any citizens comments? No? Okay. It is now recommended that the board move into closed session to consider information regarding the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the district or legal counsel for the district, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee of the public body or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity, collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees, litigation when an action against, affecting, or on behalf of the particular public body has been filed and is pending before a court or administrative tribunal, or when the public body finds that an action is probable or imminent, in which case the basis for the finding shall be recorded and entered into the minutes of the closed meeting. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Selby?
Aye.
Ms. Colbert?
Aye.
Ms. Fick?
Aye.
Ms. Hyman?
Aye.
Ms. Meyer?
Aye.
Ms. Garlowski?
Aye. Motion passes. Okay, want to take a
2 minutes?
few-minute break, and we'll be back.